Welcome back, everybody, to About the Common Man. This is your host, Ardell Jackson. Oh, man, I got one for you today. I want to thank everybody for joining, everybody for subscribing. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel and for being a part of the movement. Today isn't really about motivation, failure, success, politics, or telling anybody how they should live. This is simply something that was on my mind this morning. I woke up and I gave thanks to my creator like I always do. Thankful for another day. Thankful for my health, thankful for my wife and my family, thankful that my children are safe and they continue to grow, thankful for just life in general. And while I was driving to work on Friday, I started thinking about what the word life actually means. And I asked myself this question: are we really living our lives, or are we spending most of our lives maintaining them? And I know some of you guys have asked yourself that question, but ask yourself that question. Because I know I had to ask myself that question on Friday, right? And I was thinking about my average day. I was thinking about how much of my day revolves around work. And for me, I wake up about 4:30ish in the morning. I get myself together. I head to work. It takes me about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to get there, depending on traffic. I work a full day, 9 to 5, 8-hour day. Then I make that long commute home. And that commute can be about 2 hours long, depending on traffic. But by the time you get home, how much of your day is left? And I'm not complaining about work. I'm appreciative of all the opportunities that I have in life. Not complaining at all. I've worked my entire life. I understand responsibilities. I understand providing for my family, but I'm asking the questions that need to be asked. How much of our life do we actually spend living? And that's a valid question to ask yourself. How many hours of your day actually belong to you? Ask yourself that question. And then after I asked myself that question, I started thinking, I said, are we working to live, or are we maintaining a lifestyle? That question really hit me hard, right? Most of us work to maintain the lifestyle we created. And that's how we created that. The cars, the house, all the other luxuries that we have. And then comes with that the utilities, the food, the vacations that we take, the children's needs, everyday expenses that we have to deal with. Nothing is necessarily wrong with having those things in our lives. I enjoy having nice things too, just like you. But every time or everything comes with what? Comes with responsibility. It comes with a price tag. Sometimes the price tag is not just a dollar figure, but it's time in itself. Have you ever thought about that? A house comes with a payment. Cars come with payments, insurance, and maintenance. We know that. The lifestyle requires what? Income. The lifestyle requires income, and income requires what? It requires our time, and our time is precious. So the big question that I have: at what point are we no longer working to live, but living to maintain everything we've accumulated in life? Maybe the goal isn't always more, having more. Maybe sometime the goal should be just having enough freedom to actually enjoy what you already have. Then I switched the channel and I said, man, when did life become such a grind? A lot of people don't just have a job anymore. A lot of us have a job and then 2 or 3 side hustles. Some people have 2 jobs. Some people work 6 to 7 days a week. Some people technically work 8 hours, but then answering calls and emails long after the day has ended when they should be spending time with their family. I was a product of that at one point, and then I stopped it. We're consistently grinding each and every day, consistently trying to get ahead, consistently preparing for the next responsibility or the next bill. And sometimes we never stop long enough to ask ourselves, what am I getting ahead toward? Remember, money can come back. Time doesn't. This is where my thinking has changed a lot as I gotten older. I hit the 50 mark, last year, just recently over the summer. And so I started thinking differently. You can make more money, you can replace a car, you can buy another house, you can rebuild financially. But the one thing I realized, you cannot get back yesterday, and you cannot get back the time. You can't get your children being young again back. You can't get certain moments with your parents back. You can't get certain moments with your spouse back. Eventually, you realize that time was the most valuable thing you own. Then you start thinking to yourself, you start asking yourself, are the things we're chasing worth the time that we're giving up to get them? I know I started asking myself that. Man, I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it just felt like time was precious then. I was born in the 70s. I grew up through the 80s, the 90s. And I'm not saying everything was perfect back then. It wasn't. Life isn't perfect. I'm perfect. We had problems just like we have problems today. But life felt different to me. It felt like time was precious. Time was valuable. We really value time. Things seemed simpler in certain ways. We didn't have everything kids have today, the technology, the iPads, the iPhones, the video games, all those types of things, they have today. But we found something to do. We maximized our time. We went outside. We created games with our friends. We played basketball, football, baseball. We rode our bikes until the street lights came on. We talked face to face with our friends. We figured things out. We used our imagination to create the things that we wanted in life, and even to create the games that we played with our friends. Sometimes having less forced us to do what? Be more creative. It gave us more time to do things because we had less. When I was a kid, man, we used to go door to door and knock. After watching our Saturday morning cartoons, we go door to door and knock on the other kids in the neighborhood and say, man, can someone ask their parents, can so-and-so come out and play? And we would all get together and we would spend all day together, man, just riding our bikes, going to the basketball courts, playing ball, playing football, just spending time together, 15, 20 kids looking out for each other, just spending time together, man, just really maximizing our time as children. And we had a ball. And it seems like now it's kind of lost in a lot of ways. As a coach, I see a lot of kids now, they're spending a lot of time playing travel basketball. We didn't have a lot of that back then. They're playing travel sports, so they really are just locked into their goals, and that's great. But then they miss those other things. It's miss time being with their friends and things like that, the things that I just discussed, because now we're so locked into all these other things and everyone's chasing something. Everyone's chasing the dream, which is great, chase the dream. But then we forget about life and living life and understanding what that means. When did we lose some of our creativity? I'm asking you guys that. Please tell me. I have some thoughts on it, but please tell me. As children, we dream big. We imagine things. Somebody wanted to own their own business. That's what they imagined. Somebody wanted to travel. We imagined that. Wanted to see the world, Great Wall of China, all those things we see on TV. Somebody wanted to build something, build the biggest skyscraper in the world. Somebody wanted to become an artist, the best painter or the best singer. Then adulthood came out of nowhere because, like I said, time is precious, right? Then you got to work. You have bills, you have responsibilities, you create a family, you have life now that's taken over. And slowly, some of those dreams started to disappear. Not because they weren't possible. All dreams are possible. Sometimes we simply become too busy surviving each and every day, and we forget about those dreams that we had as kids. And we need to take a second and pause and think about those things. Ask yourself this, right? What did you love doing before life told you what you were supposed to do? And you guys know what I mean by that. Maybe there's still a piece of that person inside of you. You just have to dig deep. That's when it comes to purpose, having those conversations with yourself, understanding who you are, understanding what you need out of life. What happened to community? That's another question I was asking myself driving in. What happened to community? Another difference I think is think about is community. I think about this all the time. Growing up, people knew their neighbors. Adults looked out for the kids in the neighborhood. If you were doing something, or you were somewhere doing something that you weren't supposed to do, and, somebody's mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, might have corrected you without them fearing for their lives, because we have respect for the older generation, the older folks. And somehow you know how that information beats you home. So you knew it was coming home. So you waited until the street lights came on because you knew you were going to get in trouble. So you were praying to God that if it got there, then, hopefully your parents or whomever you that was responsible for you forgot. I mean, I know I did. That happened to me a lot, right? You know, there was truly a sense that we were looking out for one another back then. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't exist anymore. I'm not saying that at all. It's it absolutely does in a lot of communities, but we've lost a lot of that. You guys see it. You see it on social media. You see it all the time. But sometimes it just feels like we become so disconnected with one another that we just don't care about anybody else but ourselves. We have technology that allows us to communicate with anybody in the world now, and we tend to use it in a different way, in a different fashion. Yet sometimes we barely know who the person we're living next door to. And I know we have your Karens, and you have you have the people who complain about everything. You have I get that. You have those people. I'm sure those people existed back then when I was kids. But you had a sense, you had people who wasn't so much nosy into what's going on in your family life. But if they saw your kid doing something wrong, man, they really truly corrected them without having to worry about repercussions from the kids, but also repercussion from the parents. You lost that sense of community. When do we stop being a community and start becoming individually, simply just living our lives around one another, not caring for another person? What happened? What happened to us? What happened to our country? What happened to our culture? Something did change. I truly believe something changed, man. I lived through several different eras. I was born in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and now the 2020s. Every generation has experienced change. We know that. Technology changed, of course, throughout the course of history. Work changed throughout the course of history, different industries, different things. With technology comes different jobs. Communication changed with iPads and all iPhones and all this other stuff that we have. And, communication has changed. Social media changed how we interact with each other. We had that big P word that happened a couple years back that changed a lot of how people really lived and communicated with one another. I'm not saying everything before us was better. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, I'm saying something changed. And I'm just asking you guys, what do you feel changed? And sometimes I sit back and I ask myself, what did we gain with all of these things? What did we lose by having all of the technology? What should we keep? What should we try to bring back that really helps get us that sense of community back and looking out for one another instead of being individuals, instead of, hating on one another and trying to destroy each other? What should we try? We got to try something. Because at the end of the day, we're not losing, but our children will lose and our grandchildren will lose if we don't try to get back to some of our roots, some of the things that really have established who we are. Being a Gen X person, a Gen X kid, we had foundations, and I try to build that foundation in my household to this day. We don't have to agree to respect each other. This is something I really believe. We don't have to agree to respect each other. Everybody doesn't have to think like me or think like someone else. Everybody doesn't have to agree with me or agree with someone else. And I don't have to agree with everybody or everybody else. And you don't either as well. That's life. I've always believed that you can learn something from anybody. That person can have a different backgrounds, different generations, different experiences, different opinions. You can learn. We should just be able to sit down and say, I don't agree with you, but I respect your right to see it differently. And that's okay. That's okay. It seems like somewhere along the way, disagreements started to become disrespect. And folks, if I didn't agree with you, then you didn't like me. And that's not how it was. It should be, yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay, all right, okay, we can agree to disagree, and then we can still have that same friendship. But now if I disagree with someone on something, then and they get upset, then now we may not even be talking for months. That's not community. That's not love for one another. That's selfishness. That's just believing that what you believe in is means more, and that they're supposed to follow your way. But that's not how it is. God gave us free will. God gave us choices. God gave us the brain. God gave us our opinions. We can think things through, each and every one of us, and we don't have to agree to have a sense of community, to look out for one another, to be friends, to love one another. We don't. We need to get back to conversations, good, wholesome conversations, good, wholesome debates. You remember when you had those debates in class and school, and they were great debates. And man, you had some great debates in history class or English or what have you. And you debated on things, and then you walked away and you were still cool with that person that you debated with, because you guys just had different opinions and your thoughts. And you continue those conversations, and eventually you would see the light. And even if you didn't agree, you found some common ground. But you always had respect for one another. We need to get back to that. Our society is losing it slowly. They're losing it rapidly, actually, not slowly, but we're losing it. We need to get back to that. And that leads me to listen to understand, and instead of always listening to respond. That's something we need to change too, because a lot of folks listen to respond instead of listening to understand. And then if you would listen to understand, and you can fully hear someone through, and then maybe you guys can come to some kind of agreement on the topic at hand. Then as I was driving in, another thing that popped up in my mind, I was like, maybe success needs a different definition, right? We were taught, get an education, get a good job, buy a home, raise a family, build retirement, work until retirement, 62, 65, then enjoy the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with any of those things at all. I'm not saying there's something wrong with those things. I've followed many of those same principles in my life. But as I've gotten older and at the 50 mark, I've started questioning and started asking questions. Why does living have to wait until retirement? Why can't success also mean peace, time with your family, traveling, sitting outside, doing absolutely nothing, creating something that you always wanted to create, helping somebody, being present, waking up without feeling like you're consistently chasing something? Because I know we all feel like that some days. I know I do. Now, I'm not saying I have all the answers, folks, because I don't. I'm not sitting here pretending like, I figured life out, because I haven't. I'm still figuring it out each and every day, just like you. That's what By the Common Man is all about. I'm asking the same questions others and other regular people are asking each and every day. I'm working, I'm providing, I'm raising a family, I'm trying to build something, I'm trying to enjoy life, I'm trying to understand my purpose in life, I'm trying to figure out how to balance all of it, just like you are. And maybe that's the conversation we need to have. Maybe that's just the conversation that we need to have. And then, you start thinking, and I started asking myself, man, what is a good life? Maybe the biggest question isn't how much money did I make last week or this year, how big my house is or how big my house was, what kind of car did I drive. Maybe the question is, did I actually live today? Did I actually live? Am I actually living my life? Did I spend time with people I love? Did I laugh and enjoy each and every moment that I'm here on this earth? Am I doing that? Did I create memories with folks that I've come in contact with in my families that they will remember when I'm no longer here? Did I help somebody become better, find their worth, understand their value in this world? Did I leave something positive in someone and plant something positive in someone's mind that they can take and they can use to help them grow, and then plant another positive seed in someone else's mind? Did I enjoy some of this life while I was here? Remember, I go back to one of my other podcasts when I talked about living your heaven on earth, enjoying your life while you're here. The final question I want to ask you guys is this: if you didn't have to spend so much of your life maintaining your lifestyle, what would you actually do with your life? I'm asking myself that question right now to this day. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is being on here and talking about things and trying to help motivate people. And if I could do this every day of my life, I would. And I'm going to continue to do it because I just feel like if I can help someone and help shed some light into someone else's life, that can help them then shed light into someone else's life, then I can help build a better community of people in this world. So if you didn't have to spend so much of your life maintaining your lifestyle, what would you actually do with your life? Drop that in the comments. Let me know. I really want to hear your answers, folks. I really want to hear your answers. Don't make this political. Don't attack anybody for their own opinions and what they think. Just tell me about your life and your experiences. If you grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, tell me what you think changed, or tell me what you think was great and what you think we need to get back to. If you're younger, tell me what life looks like from your generational point of view. We don't have to agree. Let's just have conversation. Let's just get back to that good old conversation, like that good old conversation at the dinner table that we used to have, and folks laughed, and we got angry at moments, but we laughed it off and we showed love. Find the Common Man isn't about having all the answers, because I don't. It's about real people having real conversations about real life. If something I said and something I'm saying helps a person think differently, dream again, or dream big, reconnect with somebody or something that they've lost, or simply appreciate another day of their life, then it's worth doing this each and every day. Appreciate your life. Appreciate your people. Protect your time. Keep asking questions, because they'll help you get through. Keep learning from one another. And most importantly, man, don't get so busy maintaining a life that you forget to live it. I'm going to repeat that. And most importantly, don't get so busy maintaining a life that you forget to live it. This is By the Common Man. I'm out. Peace.